Well, hello there. Hello. Thank you so much for being here, Brand Rewind Live. I'm Denise Kagler. I am here alone today because my co host, Barika, is not feeling well. In fact, she has strep throat. Oh my gosh, I hope you're feeling better soon, Barika. I've never had strep throat. I've heard it's terrible. And Patia had a conflict, but we're going to have some fun. The few of us here, we're going to have some fun tonight. But the first thing I want to do, so welcome to Brand Rewind Live. I'm coming to you as always from Boston, Massachusetts. My company is MDK Brand Management. And I'm going to call an audible today because I sent out a reminder yesterday about some stories that we were going to cover. But since I'm by myself, I'm going to change it up just a little bit. We are going to talk about a couple stories, but I do want to start with what we usually start off talking about, which is what happened on this day, or what is this day known for? So today is December 7th, Thursday, December 7th, and you might have seen in the news or just know on your own that 82 years ago today, December 7th, 1941, Japan surprised the US. Yes, Japan surprised the US, attacked Pearl Harbor on Hawaii, a territory of Hawaii at the time. Hawaii was a territory. Surprise attack, killing thousands of Americans. About 2,500 were killed, 1,100 more were injured. 12 ships were sank as a result of that surprise attack. Um, um, Multiple people I mentioned were injured. It was a terrible, terrible day, as you probably know from certainly reading in your history books. There were also hundreds of aircraft were destroyed. The next day, December 8th, President Franklin Roosevelt called December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. I'm sure you have heard that quote before. And Congress declared war on Japan, and that pulled the US into World War II. So lots of history between December 7th and December 8th, 82 years ago. But we're going to focus on now. Yes, we're going to talk about now. So, what is going on in the world today as it relates to branding or rebranding or rewinding a brand? So, I want to start with Fantasia Barrino Taylor and the remake of The Color Purple, the musical adaptation of The Color Purple. It opens on Christmas Day. I'm so looking forward to seeing it. Fantasia did just such an amazing interview in Elle magazine, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But let's start with watching this trailer for The Color Purple. Hmm. Mhm. Hmm. Hmm. So I hope you guys could hear that. I couldn't hear it on my end, perhaps you guys could hear it on your end. She did, as I mentioned, a fantastic interview in Elle magazine, where she really opens up and talk about a brand rewind or rebranding. If you didn't know the story of Fantasia, look at this beautiful shot of her on the cover of Elle magazine. If you didn't know the story of Fantasia, read the article, be inspired. She does give credit to The Color Purple for helping her to heal, as she said. There's a quote on how The Color Purple led to her moment of healing, and she goes into all the tragedies and all the issues that she went through years ago. She had a couple of suicide attempts. You met, if you were a fan of American Idol, which I was, she won American Idol, only 19 years old. All of a sudden, she's just pushed into the spotlight, world stage, and then, of course, Hollywood and the theater. And she was struggling behind the scenes, which very few people were aware of. And there's a line in Elle magazine when it says she would need the unwavering faith to rebuild. And so I want to shift gears and talk about that, because so many people go through a process where they have to rebuild or rebrand for whatever reason. And I think about people who perhaps have lost their job. Maybe they had a personal crisis that put them in a really bad place, and they had to think of how they were going to get out of it, what kind of faith, or how their faith was going to help them to rebuild. Perhaps you had some financial challenges that made you kind of question what was going to happen with your future, and made you want to think about or force yourself into rebuilding or rebranding. So in addition to the faith, it's also around surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you, who are going to push or pull you out there and get you back on your feet. I'm a huge believer, and I've talked about that on the show before. I'm a huge believer in surrounding yourself with believers, people who are really going to pick you up when things get tough. And Fantasia, going back to the article, Fantasia, she had her mother, her grandmother. She talks about her new husband, who she says calls her a queen and treats her like a queen. And he's constantly telling her, "Hey, my queen." There's something very special about that. And, those things will help you rebuild and get your life back on track. So rebranding, it's an ongoing evolution, or can be an ongoing evolution. I mean, you could have one brand one day, and I talk a lot about this with clients. You can have a brand one day and decide that, you know what, I'm shifting gears. I want a new job, or I want to move into a new industry. Or perhaps you're graduated from college and you had a brand that was a college student brand, and now you want to be a professional. So you need to start rebranding yourself as a professional. Perhaps you worked in a company, you were an employee, and now you're going to start your own business and be an employer, or a small business. Whether or not you have employees, you still want to rebrand yourself as a small business owner. I remember when I transitioned from corporate into owning a small business, I had to rebrand. To this day, though, people still associate me with Reebok, or working in the sports industry, because I spent so much in my early years, and not just early years, so many of my professional years working in the sports industry. So it took a bit of time and work to rebrand myself. But I would love to see in your comments about anything that you have done, or did you go through a period in your life or your career where you had to rebrand? Hey, Pop Research, thanks for being here. Hey, Yvonne, thanks for being here. So glad you guys are here with me. So put in the comments whether you've been in a position where you've rebranded or rebuilt your career or your life because of change in circumstance, whether it's a job change, professional change, whether you wanted it to happen or not. What is something that perhaps you had to do, and how did you do it? One way is networking. I wrote today, I posted on LinkedIn. For those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, I posted on LinkedIn today tips on networking. And I focused on an elevator pitch, because that is something that you definitely need, in my opinion, if you're going to go out and start networking. And so I put 3 tips, and I'll quickly go through them here, the 3 tips to follow as you start thinking about, hey, mindful mommy life. Yes. Yes, I definitely pivoted after being laid off and decided to build my own business. And yes, and you know what? I can relate to that, because that's exactly what happened to me. When I started my company, MDK Brand Management, it was a result of a reorganization at my company, and I found myself out of work. So, but let me ask you, we can have this dialogue. And I talked about it perhaps on the show, I'm not sure. I certainly wrote about it in my book. So my job was eliminated in 2015. In 2014, I was attending a huge women's conference, and up on stage was an executive from Tory Burch. And she said, ladies, all the ladies out there, if you have not yet prepared, thank you for that thumbs up. If you have not yet prepared um, your next chapter, do it because you never know when you're going to need it. And at the time, I remember thinking, I said, geez, I don't have a next chapter. And I had this SVP job at this big multi-billion dollar company. And if the rug were suddenly pulled out from under me, I wouldn't have known what to do. And I thought, you know what? I need to start thinking about my second chapter. And that's exactly what I did. And perhaps like you, mommy, mindful mommy, I started thinking back before I lost my job about starting a business. And so I did. And I started talking to people and I started putting pieces together. What was it that I was passionate about that I could actually build a business around? So I wrote a business plan about branding. I took it to a couple of CEOs in the Boston area and said, hey, can you take a look at this? And I remember one CEO read my business plan, and he said to me, you know, Denise, I read a lot of business plans, and I ask two questions. One, is there really a problem? Or is this person just making up a problem? Is there really a problem? And does this person, meaning me at the time, have a solution? Maybe not the solution, but a solution to the problem. And he said, when I read your plan, I say, yes, branding is a problem, not only for companies, but for individuals. Because you think about, especially social media, oh my gosh, sometimes I just want to just scream when I see some of the stuff that folks do on social media, even in person and maybe you guys see it too, when I go out and about and I see people acting all crazy in person. I don't say anything, you know, we stay out of that stuff, but it showcases a brand that perhaps they don't realize that they're putting out there. And he said, yeah, that's the problem. And I do believe that what you want to do is a solution because my company has three different primary services. I do branding workshops, personal branding, and employer branding workshops, career coaching, and I do business consulting where I work with companies to rebrand or do events and brand their events or different things to do with the businesses. If it had not been for that word of advice from the executive from Tory Burch, I'm not sure I would have been prepared. So I'm so thankful that I heard those words, and perhaps everything happens for a reason. There was a reason I heard those words, because fast forward a year later, yep, my job was eliminated, but I was 90% almost done with setting up my company. So I was able to just slide right on in. My last day at my company was July 1st, 2015, and I was able to launch my company July 15th with, by the way, the company that let me go, they were my first client. How about that? They were my first client. So everything worked out. So thank you for sharing that. Hey D, good to see you, sis. Hey Facebook, hey, I can't tell. I don't know if that's who that is. So tell me you said, hey Denise, let me know what your name is, because all that's popping up here is Facebook users. So I really want to know who that is. So thanks for being here. And so the evolution of branding or rebranding is an evolution. So think about the things that maybe you want to do um, today or next week or next year, but you're not doing it now. You can start thinking now about, okay, how do you want to start setting yourself up for success as you pivot, to use mindful mommy's word, as you pivot into something else. So how do you want to do that? And what steps do you need to take to get there? So I mentioned networking. So yes, I posted on LinkedIn today, networking piece, and talked about elevator pitch. And so if you do not have an elevator pitch, hello, everyone out there who can hear my voice, please, please think about an elevator pitch, because you are going to need one. You are gonna need one. You may not think today you're gonna need one, but you are gonna need one. I didn't have one the first time I needed one many, many, many years ago. I did not have one. I was caught completely flat-footed. It was terrible. So I learned a valuable lesson. I talked to a lot of my clients about having an elevator pitch. And so check out my LinkedIn post. But the first thing I say, not but the first thing I say in my post is to have a very good opening line in your elevator pitch. And so if it's, I use an example in the post today, if you are a realtor and you are at a networking event, and the first thing you should do, by the way, is start talking to people who you're meeting and getting or showing an interest in who they are. Ask them questions. People love talking about themselves. And so ask them, hey, who are you? What do you do? And give them an opportunity to talk. And they're going to eventually ask you the same thing. So, who are you and what do you do? You want to be prepared for that. So, the first thing is to have a really cool, clever opening. So, I use, if you're a realtor, as an example, you could say, rather than say, I'm a realtor, which you will eventually say, you could start off by saying something along the lines of, I help people find their happy place. I help people find their happy place. So, what's the first thing that someone's going to do when they hear you say that? They're going to smile. They're going to lean in. They're going to want to know more. What does she mean by that? Huh? What do you mean by that? And you can say, I'm a realtor. The second thing is to have some really cool, savvy opening line. And the second thing I talk a lot about is have your why. Build your why in that elevator pitch. So your why, and people have different definitions of your why. You can read online. People have different definitions. I look at a why is, why are you inspired to go down your professional path? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you excited when that alarm clock goes off? What makes you not go, oh, I got to get up again? What makes you jump out of that bed when you've had a bad day? You want to look back and think, this is why I do this. This is why I do this. So in my post today, I use an example going back to my realtor example. I say, okay, here's a why. My parents went through an ugly divorce when I was a kid. My mother needed to find a new place for us to live. We worked with the realtor for months. She took us to look at so many different places. We couldn't afford most of them. And then she finally showed us a place that we could afford. And I had not seen my mother this happy in years. And one night we were all at home and she just said out loud, we found our happy place. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to build a career that made people as happy as I saw that realtor make my mother. So your why, a lot of doctors, I'm making this up, I'm assuming this is true. Doctors become doctors because perhaps they saw a loved one get sick and perhaps pass away. And there was nothing they could do about it. And it just made them feel awful. And they decided, you know what? I'm going to help sick people try to get better, or I'm going to help comfort family members of sick people. And they grew up to become a doctor or a counselor or something. So, what is it that inspires you to travel down that path? Imagine if you include that in your elevator pitch or your brand narrative, which is another phrase I use, your brand narrative during a conversation at a networking event. Can you imagine how that sets you apart if you can tell that very human and humanizing story about why you're on your professional path? Imagine if you're interviewing for a job, or you're pitching to a client, or you want to join a board, or whatever it is, and you sit across from someone, because we're all humans, we all have these same, similar human experiences. Imagine sharing those stories that really make you unique, that no one else shares. Because when you go into an interview, you got a piece of paper, you got a resume, chances are you're going to have similar experiences, similar education credentials, similar job experiences, whatever, volunteer experiences. But what's going to set you apart, what's going to help brand you or rebrand you, is that why, that story that comes from the heart. So I really do I do encourage my clients when they're working on their elevator pitch, and my students, I teach at 2 universities. I talk to my students about that. Really think about that. when I before COVID, when I was working a lot with clients, with inmates in prisons, we I went through or had workshops, 4-week workshops at different prisons around the state, and I would talk to inmates about their why. Some of the whys you may not share because some of them are very personal. Some of them are probably things you probably don't want to talk about that. So think about the why and try to find a why. And you might have more than one why, but there's usually one why that kind of gets you. That kind of gets you. My why my why, and I've talked about this before and I write about it in my book. My why is that I was a very shy introvert. When I was a kid, I was extremely shy. My sister Dee is on. Um, uh, she knows this. Uh, I would cry if a teacher called on me in class to answer a question in class in front of the other students. Literally, tears would just start streaming down my face at the thought of having to speak in front of anyone other than my sisters and my mother. Extremely shy and introverted in my younger years. Well, you can't really do a lot to build a career, certainly not progress in a career if you cry when somebody asks you to say something in public. So I had to figure out a way to build my confidence and get past that block. That block. And there are tons of people who are afraid to speak in public, tons of people. And there are all kinds of strategies that people use to be able to speak in public. Um, Thank you, mindfulness. This is true. I won several grants from oh, look at you, elevator pitch competitions. I've heard of those. I've never done one, but yay, hats off to you for doing that. Geez, I should try that, huh? Probably um something that would be cool for to do, but congratulations. Yeah. So elevator pitches are important. Um, and so yeah, think about the things that you could include that your why. So what is your why? What stands you apart? Why are you on your professional path? And because I was such a shy introvert I knew I was not going to be able to build a career being that person. I love, love, love working with clients, both individual clients, but also small businesses and nonprofits who are struggling to find what sets them apart, who are struggling to break out from the clutter, who are struggling to set themselves apart and let people know, hey, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And they have it. I mean, if you're a shy introvert, which I forget what the percentage is, but there are a lot of shy introverts out there. There is something inside of you. You would just have to tap into it. Find something that you can lean into that is going to help break you out of that. Um, as I mentioned earlier, surrounding yourself with believers, people who are going to help you. Um, I am on a board at UMass Boston. We had a board meeting today, and the students talked about they have 3 students presented to the board. So imagine you're a student, you're presenting to a board of folks, professionals in the room, and and 2 of them who presented actually were 2 of my former students from last semester. So I was so proud of them when they got up there, because my class at UMass Boston is personal branding for a competitive edge. So it's all about getting out there and finding that confidence and working on your elevator pitch and helping to find your why and getting out there on social and networking. But one of the other students who spoke wasn't one of my former students, but she said out loud that she was a nervous wreck being up there speaking in front of the board. And I was just so proud of her for doing that. And so yes, we started talking about the brand of Fantasia Barrino Taylor and how this movie, The Color Purple, she says that the color purple led to her moment of healing. What is that moment of healing or rebranding, rewinding your brand? What is it that can help you push through if you're struggling to rebrand, or you want to rebrand, or you're looking at something in your life that's not going exactly right, but maybe it's almost there. You're looking for that one thing. What is it that could help you sort of push you through? Or what has helped you push through? So Mommy Mindful or Mindful Mommy Life mentioned participating in these various uh, elevator pitch competitions, which is awesome. So I'm sure the more that you do, Mindful Mommy Life, the more of those that you did, you probably felt even more confident, more confident, more confident, more confident, the more of these competitions that you participated in. So that is awful and good for you. Oh, yes, she was my sister. Yes, yes, I was terribly shy. So good for you. And those of you who are on and have uh, developed, written an elevator pitch, who've used your elevator pitch out there. It has helped you make some cool connections. The one thing also in my LinkedIn posts I talk about a lot with my clients is to have business cards. I say personal business cards because clearly if you work for a company and you want to make sure that you are making these connections with people who you may still want to keep in touch with after you leave the current job that you have and you've given them your current job business card. I'm a huge proponent of having your personal business cards without any company um, listed on it. Have your own personal information. So your personal email, your name, obviously, your personal email, your cell number, an inspirational quote, perhaps that says a lot about who you are. Use those instead as you're going out and networking, because if you give them your business card, unless you own your own business, but if you give them your company business card and something comes up and you're all of a sudden you find that you're not working there anymore, then guess what? That person who you were dying reaches out to you at some point is not going to be able to find you because you gave them that. And in pop research, yes, you're right about that. And I was going to mention that too. And I do mention what you just said in my LinkedIn post, which is these digital business cards. So you can hand out the old fashioned cards, or you can take your phone, which is like the thing to do now, or exchange it digitally that way, which is like the thing to do. So yes, digital business cards are the next. Actually, they've been around for maybe 3 or 4 years now. They've been around, so those are really cool. If you're not familiar with them, is it Vistaprint? Vistaprint is one company I know who does them, but I'm sure that other companies, Pop Research, I'm sure there are other companies that do them for sure. Yeah, these digital business cards. They're really cool. You don't have to then spend time printing up your business cards, but definitely have something that is yours that you can use as you're networking, as you're rebranding, as you're rebuilding, to make sure that people are able to get in touch with you should you move around or decide to have your own business. Okay, I feel like I've been talking. It's so different to be here alone because I want to, share. And I'm so glad you guys are so engaging and engaged. I'm so happy. So thank you, guys, for that. And I don't know if I'm seeing other people, if I'm missing anybody else. Who was that before we go? Because we're almost out of time. Who was that on Facebook? Who I see somebody's texting me, but who was that on Facebook who didn't have their name, but not sure who that was. Thank you for thank you for sharing this. Fawn, yes, hey Fawn. I thought that was you, but I didn't want to say it until I knew for sure. Fawn, thanks for being here, Fawn. I say, those of you who've been watching Brand Rewind, we've been on 3 years now. We have our regulars. Yvonne is a regular. Fawn is a regular. Pop Research is a regular. We've seen Mindful Mommy here before. So thank you all for sticking with us. We'll be back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks on December 21st. By the way, happy belated Thanksgiving. I knew I wanted to say something I forgot. So I hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. I should have opened the show by saying that. I hope you did have one. I was actually with both my kids, Joey and Danielle, in Richmond, Virginia. My son got a new job. Talk about rebranding or branding. My son just got a new job in Richmond, Virginia. So we up and moved there. So I'm so excited. My daughter moved. You guys have heard me talk about my daughter and my son. My daughter just moved from Austin, Texas to New York City. So we were scrambling to get her settled. The same exact time, the same week, the same 2 weeks, my kids both moved to different cities. It was insane, but it was great. So proud of both of them. So Brand Rewind. So we'll be back live in 2 weeks, December 21st. We do have an announcement to make. during that show when Barika and Petit and I will be together, hopefully be together on December 21st. We will have an announcement to make for you then. In the meantime, thanks so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Thanks for keeping me company for this half hour. Love you guys, and I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Stay safe, and yeah, be good. All right, bye.